Claudio Muruzábal is President of Latin America and the Caribbean for SAP, and Iván Chávez is Executive Vice President of Grupo Vidanta. They're here at the Wilson Center today taking part in a conference on fostering innovation in Latin America, the power of large companies, and we'll find out what that's all about in a minute. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, John.
Let me ask you, for the context in which we're speaking, to define the term innovation. You know, you can look it up in the dictionary and see one thing, but what are we talking about specifically in terms of fostering innovation in an economic system? Let's begin with you, Claudio, if we could.
In very simple terms, is doing something that you were not doing before. It's changing
not business
the way
as usual.
That you were doing what you were doing. When you think of innovation, you think of technology.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily about technology. It is about changing the way you run your business.
So it could be a low-tech innovation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Iván, your thoughts on the
I agree 100%.
definition?
I think innovation is transformation. And I think that people often pressure themselves too much, when they're asked, tell us if you innovate. They're looking for that huge step, that is transformative. But the reality is that we think all the little steps combined is really what makes a big change, a few years down the line. And that's what people see. It's like a magic trick. Magicians spend 10 years developing a 3-second trick, but people just see the trick and they don't see all the preparation, all the little things that led up to that moment. So we're happy with slow, or not slow, but consistent and daily, transformations.
So as executives in companies, do you know it when you see it? Is that how innovation works? In other words, people are doing things every day in your companies, right? And occasionally they try something new. What in your eyes qualifies as innovation? Is it the type of thing is that you see it after the fact, or is it something that you can design and encourage in advance?
There's always this aha moment, no? That definitely you run into something that you didn't think that could be created. Sometimes comes from a new hire, sometimes comes from somebody that was from a different department within the company, and the idea is 20%. 80% is how do you implement it.
Mm-hmm.
So as a leader, your biggest challenge is making sure that 80% doesn't get in the way of the great idea, and try to make it happen.
And I would add to that if you're sensitive to your customers and the pressures that they're demanding from you, then it's more after the fact. In the middle of it, you're running and you're making sure you're delivering, and you're coming up with ideas that at the time you're not sure how they're going to impact.
Yeah.
But once you deliver them and you see them working and you see the satisfaction go up, of our guests, in our case with resorts, then you realize, hey, that was a much bigger idea than I thought.
Even if it sometimes is after the fact, or even often after the fact, are there things you can do to foster an environment where innovation takes place or is more likely to take place?
Sure, we do it. For us, a design meeting is probably the place where you can impact the most the product.
Mm-hmm.
The issue with that is that, when you're designing something, it takes a few years for it to be built, and then you see it. So it's not immediate whether it was a good idea or not. So something that we do in our design meetings is no idea is off topic. Nothing is too crazy. Nothing is too expensive, though later we sit with engineers. But we encourage everybody to just, say something crazy, say something different, propose it. And we don't frown upon it, we encourage it. So we encourage things that have not been done before. And just because it hasn't been done before, doesn't mean it's a bad thing. We actually like it, and so we encourage it, and we develop those ideas really to the point of engineering, of budgeting, and we start construction on them, sometimes, and that's when we realize that it turns out that it worked.
It's interesting that the person representing the tech firm made the point that it doesn't always have to be tech driven, that we could be talking about low tech. But when you look at the overall momentum in Latin America, where are the disruptions happening? Where are the innovations occurring? Is it tech driven largely, or is it something else?
Technology always plays a role. The point I was making is that not necessarily the most sophisticated technology is the way you combine technology components.
Yeah.
If you look at the successful startups that we use, the ones that come to mind, Airbnb, Uber, they're not sophisticated technology sites or technology companies. They combine very standard technology in a way that wasn't combined before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so much the technology itself. In our case, what we believe is creating the platform for people to innovate and combine the different technologies. sorry for the wrong answer, but let me make you think about this. We're talking about emerging technologies, like big data, IoT, blockchain, all these names that are thrown to us in the media every day, and that presented as emerging technologies. But really, they're not emerging. This is what we use every day. Our phone has more big data, more machine learning and artificial intelligence that we think of.
Mm-hmm.
So it's with us already.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating that you made clear that it doesn't always have to be technology, even while you make clear that technology is certainly a significant driver of all the things we're talking about. We framed this, or the conference you were just at framed it in terms of large companies. What is that particular qualification? Is there a role beyond the obvious one that large companies have a lot of capital to invest and so they can play a leadership role? Are there other aspects of being larger that relate to what we're talking about?
Yeah, I think one of the examples that I gave is that when you're a large company, you have a responsibility to do things in a way that encourage development that surrounds the organization. So not just looking in, it's easy to say, I invest in my people and human capital and talk about all the programs that are internal. But as a large company, especially in the markets where we operate, you have a responsibility to grow that market. And so in our case, with resorts, the way that we do that is, we purchase locally as much as we can. And when it doesn't exist, we help develop that local merchant into a supplier. So I gave an example earlier, the Mayan communities, there's multiple generations of families that produce honey, for example. And they don't know how to sell the honey, you just know it's great honey, and they don't even know how to package it. So our chefs, go out to those locations and teach them how to label it and how to put it in a jar and, and how to market it and make it a special product. And then that's some machine that starts, working and, you develop that small company. And like that, there's many examples that I think it's too difficult to ask a small company to do that. When they're just starting, you cannot do that. You have to operate as fast as you can, as efficiently. But as a large company with the medium and long term in mind that you need to grow your market, that's when you have this responsibility to innovate by, growing others.
You may be being too modest because there are large companies that choose not to be as responsible as what you just described. It's an option. It's not necessarily an imperative. What other notions of the size question and why large factors into the equation?
I fully agree with Iván, the fact that a large company has a number of resources to get the job done. And 20 years ago, you always talk about the bureaucracy of the large firm and inability to really move. I don't think that's the case today. But there's a more interesting aspect of this, and that's the fact that technology plays a role in allowing small firms to implement technology at a cost that was prohibited in the past and now is accessible. And by doing that, you leapfrog what the large companies are doing, and what it does is it levels the playing field. So if you're a small player, now through technology you compete with the big guy. In the past, that was not possible.
I want to ask you as a final thought, it's sort of the opportunities and challenge question. And if you could, rather than talk about that in the abstract, if you talk about it from each of your company's perspectives and what's on the horizon.
In our case, our product is a vacation product. So we need to develop things that will bring people to Mexico. And we're competing with every other destination in the world, right? So it's not that we're competing with a hotel next door, is we're trying to get tourists that are deciding whether they're going to go to Europe or Hawaii to come, to Mexico. And the way that we think we're going to accomplish that is if we offer a new kind of entertainment. So not just a resort, beach vacation, but if we are able to add an entertainment layer on top of it. And the way we've done that is we've partnered with, Cirque du Soleil and Hakkasan Group, and even the new products that we design are places where, it's like a theme park, but where you're interacting with nature, where you can interact with your family. And I think the marriage of this entertainment with your vacation is something that will be a new vacation product. So in Vegas you have casinos, in Orlando you have theme parks, and what we're trying to do in Mexico is a new category of entertainment that will hopefully
sort of a hybrid.
Yeah.
And what are the trend lines showing you? Is this is interest growing?
Yes, very much so. We've opened a Cirque du Soleil permanent show, which is a dinner show. It's not a regular Vegas show, a dinner show. And Riviera Maya, hugely successful, so that was the first component that we did together, and we're doing, many more, and not just that, we see it in our own guests, repeat visitation is, skyrocketing, and we give our guest options of going elsewhere, say, hey, you can stay with us, or you can stay with some of our resort partners in other places of the world, and they don't want to go anywhere else. They want to come back with us, and so we see that as a sensitivity that we have to be alert to do something new every year and keep them coming back.
And what's the world of opportunities and challenges look like from the perspective of SAP?
Definitely, we're very fortunate to be a significant player in a space. 45 years ago, we invented the space of ERP, which is basically an integrated system to process the needs of any enterprise, large, small, or medium size. We have 94% of market share in the 500 largest businesses in Latin America. But that is just the beginning, because technology is changing so fast that the opportunities are huge. And what you need to make sure that you do not lose the focus and purpose. Mm-hmm. So what's the contribution that you do as a company to improve the world? And a big part of what we're doing is invest in a significant way in education and to lend our hand to the most challenges parts of a region, which, as you know, there are many challenges out there that we can lend a hand.
Gentlemen, always exciting times, but these are particularly exciting times. Things are moving quickly. So thank you for sharing your insights into the world of innovation in Latin America.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.